pressure you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
I'm Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
News continues. Let's turn things over to Don and Don Lemon tonight. Don, it is a tough night in the country.
It is a tough night in the country, but I want to commend you, and you've been doing this for a while, for really putting the victim of this story up front and center where they should be, and not necessarily the gunman. It's important for history to talk about who he is, but I commend you for doing that. My heart is hurting. Everyone I spoke to today, their heart is hurting and they feel helpless. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to the audience about that in just a little bit, Anderson. But we've seen this all too often.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, anybody at home can probably remember the names of the killers in Columbine, but not necessarily the names of people who lost their lives. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of mass killings in this country. We all focus on the shooter, and people learn that person's name, and they want that. They want that kind of attention. And I think it's important to report on them and their motivation and everything about them. But I just don't think we should give them that kind of extended coverage.
And listen, we have to call it what it is, right? That's our job, without fear or favor. But also, I was sitting writing the opening to my show tonight, and you, again, inspired me. I keep complimenting you, but it's the truth. As I saw your interview with that family, I thought about my family. And, this woman, one of the women who died was just going to get strawberries so she could make strawberry shortcake. And my sister does things like that all the time. Like, she sends me dog treats that she makes herself, or she'll go to the store. And I think that could be my family member just going to the local store, doing normal, everyday things. And then you have this person who's been influenced by the worst forces and voices in our country who've been poisoned by it. And then all of a sudden, you have 10 people who are dead.
Yeah. It's extraordinary, I mean, how quickly this happened, and also how this person looked to other mass shooters for inspiration. Looked to the Christchurch shooter in New Zealand who live streamed the attack. And this whole notion of live streaming attacks, I know law enforcement has been concerned about this for a long time, that's going to become sort of the new signature on some of these things. But it's just sickening that, it's an extra way of getting attention.
Yeah. And that's the consternation, too, and the challenges that we face with social media now. And I think that technology has moved so quickly that people can't keep control of it, right? It just keeps going faster and faster and faster. Law enforcement and even the people who run the companies, it's tough for them to do it. But we have to figure it out, Anderson. We got to figure it out. And we'll every night, you and I will keep talking about it as long as it happens and calling it what it is, bringing attention to it. Thanks, Anderson.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your words.
Don.
I'll see you tomorrow. This is Don Lemon tonight, and look, we do this so much, right? And then everybody sort of tiptoes around. What do you say about it? How do you do? They don't want to appease. They don't want to upset people or hurt someone's feelings or calling them left or right. And the right doesn't want you to call them racist. Let's call it what it is. And let's talk about who's actually perpetrating this, who's actually responsible for this. There's no other way to put this or to look at this shooting story except that it is awful and it hurts. And like many people, you probably feel helpless. You told me today that you feel helpless. Like there's nothing that you can do about it. And I hate to tell you that maybe you're right. Maybe you are right. That is what I thought at first, until I remembered this quote, and it's from my literary mentor, someone that I hold in high esteem, and that's James Baldwin. And the quote says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." That is the only hope that we have. Because if we don't face, and if we don't state urgently and plainly what's happening here, then this country is doomed. The racism, the literal physical building blocks of America will ultimately be its undoing if we don't face this. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Meaning that you can do something. You can call it what it is. It's racist, it's racism, it is hate, period. Call out the people who are trafficking in it right now without fear or favor. The gunman is responsible for this crime. But what is the responsibility to our society in terms of the hate flowing freely on websites and being laundered and mainstreamed on conservative media? What is the responsibility there? What is the responsibility of the people who know better and say and do nothing? Police say the suspect posted a 180-page racist rant online before the attack, where he describes himself as a white supremacist, as a fascist, as an anti-Semite, who believes in the Great Replacement theory. The false belief that white Americans are being replaced by people of other races, even if the gunman wasn't influenced by certain people, right? Even, let's just say he wasn't influenced by certain people. Boy, they sure are humming the same tune in unison.
We know what the Democrats are up to here. They want open borders. This is exactly their strategy. They want to replace the American electorate.
For many Americans, what seems to be happening, or what they believe right now is happening, is what appears to them is we're replacing national-born American, native-born Americans to permanently transform the political landscape of this very nation.
This administration wants complete open borders, and you have to ask yourself why. Is it really they want to remake the demographics of America to ensure that they stay in power forever? Is that what's happening here?
We've never seen demographic change like this. It's roughly the equivalent of a brand new city of Chicago every year, a city populated entirely by poor people with limited education who can't speak English. And the question is, how is it good for America? I mean, everyone wants to make a racial issue out of it. Ooh, the white replacement theory. No. This is a voting rights question. I have less political power because they're importing a brand new electorate. Why should I sit back and take that? I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true. Every time they import a new voter, I become disenfranchised as a current voter.
Even if the gunman wasn't influenced by certain people, boy, they sure are humming the same tune in unison, poisoning people's minds and hearts with racist theories like black people and immigrants are trying to replace white people for political gain. That's wrong. Calling it out and calling them out is not political. It's not political. It's just the truth. What they're trying to do is stop you from criticizing them, to blunt the criticism, from laying the blame at the feet of the people who are actually doing it. It's about the left. This is not about left. Don't give me that. It's not what it's about. It's not about left versus right. This is about right versus wrong. The shooter told you in this racist rant what this was about. The gunman has already told you what this is. Replacement theory drove him to this murder. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last unless we can change this. Remember, Jews will not replace us in the tiki torches. Remember the Tree of Life synagogue shooting? Remember the El Paso shooting? So what can you do at home? You're not helpless. A little bit later on in the show, I'm going to share something with you that I saw today, and it gave me an idea, as however small it might be, but that's where it starts, right? An individual act. It made me feel better. So stay tuned, and I'm going to explain to you what I mean. But first, we need to get to the story, the latest on this story. But remember, while we report on this story, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Straight now to CNN's Brian Todd. He is in Conklin, New York, where the alleged gunman lives. Brian, good evening to you. Thanks for joining. What are you getting? Are you getting some new details about the suspected shooter?
We are indeed tonight, Don. We have new information tonight on the shooter's past, on a threat that he made in the not-too-distant past, and on what law enforcement says were his plans to inflict even more carnage in this attack.
This was a straight-up hate crime, pure evil.
Tonight, police revealing details about the meticulous planning that went into the massacre of 10 people at a Buffalo store and how it could have been worse.
He had plans had he gotten out of here to continue his rampage and continue shooting people. He'd even spoken about possibly going to another store.
The 18-year-old accused of murdering several people in the parking lot. He exchanged gunfire with a security guard and shot more people in the store before surrendering to police.
He was very heavily armed. He had tactical gear. He had a tactical helmet on. He had a camera that he was live streaming what he was doing.
CNN obtained a 180-page statement attributed to the suspect, which was posted online just before the attack. The document's author says he was inspired after seeing a clip of another racially motivated attack in New Zealand in 2019, where a gunman live-streamed his murder of 51 people at 2 mosques. The document details how the shooter has been radicalized by online message boards, describing the Great Replacement Theory, which suggests the false belief that the white race is dying out.
He had the N-word, which unfortunately was carved into one of his weapons. Clearly, he was bent on hate.
CNN has obtained a photo of 2 other rifles the gunman brought to the scene that have writing on them, including the phrase, "White Lives Matter." The shooter allegedly wrote he'd chosen the Buffalo store based on the racial makeup of its zip code, and he had been serious about carrying out the attack since January.
The individual was here a few months ago, back in early March.
He'd been buying ammo, surplus military gear, and shooting irregularly, and had mapped out the store, intending to shoot all black people. The main gun, a Bushmaster XM15, was bought from this gun store before he illegally modified it. But according to the New York Times, he had no problem purchasing the weapon even after an incident at the Susquehanna Valley High School last June, when he was a student there. On the honor roll, school documents show.
The gun dealer was able to sell these weapons to this individual because there were no red flags that came up.
A spokesperson for the school district tells CNN the suspect was interviewed by police after he made an ominous reference to murder-suicide in a school project, although there was no specific threat.
He stated a facility. I'm not sure if it was a hospital or a mental health facility for a day and a half.
The gunman's neighbors we spoke to didn't want to give their names. They are frustrated.
Something got missed. You know, if he was flagged in high school, why didn't he get the mental health care he needed then? And the system failed him that caused this tragedy to occur.
They say the shooter was quiet and seemed like a normal teenager.
Then when I found out he was from Broome County, I says, I sure as hell hope he isn't from Conklin. So, and then it turns out he was. And then it turns out he's loose on my street. So we were all totally shocked about this whole thing.
The suspect is currently in custody and on suicide watch.
He's in a segregated unit aside from the rest of the general population, and that's for his safety.
The suspect has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. We've also learned that his lawyer has withdrawn a request for a mental health forensic examination to be performed on him. And, Don, we have learned tonight that there is the possibility that federal charges will be brought against the suspect in addition to the state charges. Don.
Brian Todd starting us off tonight. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. I want to bring in now CNN's senior justice correspondent, Evan Perez, and senior law enforcement analyst, Andrew McCabe, the former FBI deputy director. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Evan, I'm going to start with you. As a matter of fact, Andrew, excuse me, I'm going to start with you. We're learning just moments ago that the shooter extensively planned this attack for several months. He went into the Tops Friendly Market 3 times during his visit in March, each time writing about activity taking place inside and noting how many black versus white people were there. He even drew a map inside the market depicting the aisles and exit points of the building. The level of planning here is quite extensive. What do you make of, what does that tell you, Andrew?
Well, it's an extraordinary level of pre-planning activity, thinking through what he's going to do, talking to others in these posts on Discord and in other places about exactly what his intent was. For the investigators and the prosecutors who will try to make these cases, it's a boon of evidence, right? The hardest part of these cases is always proving the subject's mental state, whether or not they had the requisite intent, and in this case, in terms of a hate crime, whether or not they actually harbored racial animus. None of that is even remotely in question here, based on the subject's own words, his own writings, and of course his actions. But it's not uncommon with mass shooting cases to see the shooter having gone through an extensive period of planning, of equipping themselves, of moving weapons into the right place at the right time. If you think about the Las Vegas shooter, he took several days bringing all those guns into that suite in Las Vegas before he undertook his horrific attack. So that part of this is not surprising to me. The fact that we were able to uncover it so quickly is really remarkable.
Evan, CNN obtained a photo of the suspect's arsenal. The phrase "White Lives Matter" and other writings that reflect his racist beliefs were written on the weapons. Are you learning anything more about that?
Yeah, Don. So these are images that the FBI, the investigators, have now shared with law enforcement around the country. This is the kind of thing that I think is, to Andrew's point, this is going to be illustrative for law enforcement as they try to figure out how to prevent the next one of these attacks. And one thing we know is that there is going to be another one. And we know that from these images, we know that, for instance, he was obsessed with some past mass shootings. He wrote the names of past mass shooters, according to the investigators. He makes a reference to White Lives Matter. There's also a reference to anti-Semitic and anti-Black ideology, all written on these firearms that he had assembled. So again, this goes to his frame of mind, his state of mind, which he lays out in these writings online that he posted just before he went on this rampage. Don.
Isn't part of the problem, Andrew, is that when White Lives Matter, I'm sure there are people, I'm sure in other in conservative media or who are out there saying, well, what's wrong with White Lives Matter? I think these people are convinced, perhaps, that saying these things or espousing these things are not racist. Perhaps they have been brainwashed about exactly what racism is.
Well, Don, people can tell themselves things, whatever they want to hear. But we know what these phrases mean. We know what the Great Replacement Theory stands for. We know what the 14 words references. So we know what the number 88, right, references Heil Hitler. You can't hold the wool over your eyes forever and just ignore the significance of what these people who have been radicalized online, who have found a community online around these kinds of ideas and these slogans and these phrases and these justifications that a much broader audience uses every day. And I have to say that for political leadership, people in positions of political leadership and people in influential positions in the media, to actually repeat these phrases and these theories and these ideas, it gives oxygen to the extremists. It validates them in a way and encourages them that they are now, that what they've been thinking all along is actually accepted and agreed to by many people, influential people in positions of power. And that absolutely has an encouraging effect on them to go further, go deep into this ideology and to commit acts of extreme violence. So they can tell themselves that they're not responsible for what happens in places like Tops Supermarket, but it's simply not true.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it. We have a lot more ahead tonight on the Buffalo mass shooting. New York Governor Kathy Hochul joins me next with what she knows tonight.
Trends, tech, news, Marketplace Asia.
How the pandemic continues to affect consumer habits and corporate spending across Asia, in China and beyond.
Marketplace Asia, Saturday on CNN.
On this month's Living Golf, Southeast Asia bets big on golf as international tourism bounces back. Tour the new courses springing up along Vietnam's coastline. Meet a young Thai player who has just made history.
I think the thing with Thai golfers is that we're very fortunate.
And see what else the region has to offer.
The speed at which golf is developing in this country is phenomenal.
Join me, Shane O'Donoghue, for this month's Living Golf.
Saturday on CNN, in association with Gulf Saudi.
takes a few moments to gain an appreciation of just how tough it is out here.
They've been coming across sniper fire, gunfire, mortar rounds. You can see really just how intense it is here.
I have to wrap it up right now. Quite anxious about spending too much time on scene.
Those are the kids really struggling to get away.
They feel like they won't be able to outrun the war.
They thought the whole border was open.
People are just trying to bust through towards what they think is going to be a better life. These nurses, these doctors really have nerves of steel.
You can't help but be struck by how interconnected our world is.
Arwa Damon, CNN.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
One of the challenges I face is how do I reposition our forces to deal with the threats of the coming decades?
Any thought about running for president in France? Basta? We also explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster.
More breaking news that we are following right now.
You really work as hard as you can, getting the facts.
We're learning more about our life.
It is critically important.
To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
For World Sport.
World Sport.
For World Sport, I'm Coy Wyatt.
I'm Amanda Davis.
I'm Andy Scholes.
I'm Don Riddell.
I'm Alex Thomas. I'm Patrick Snell. And this
is CNN.
We've missed the globe-trotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering a city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
President Biden and the First Lady traveling to Buffalo tomorrow morning to meet with the families of victims of the racist grocery store massacre. Officials say the alleged gunman targeting people because of the color of their skin, killing 10 people. It comes as officials learn the suspect's plot may have been months in the making. Joining me now, the Democratic governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Governor, thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy time for you. Really appreciate it. Listen, the whole country is reeling, but Buffalo in particular reeling tonight. What is the latest information you have in terms of the investigation into this racist attack?
Well, that's exactly what it was, Don. There's no doubt that there was a hate-inspired racist attack, an act of what I call white supremacist domestic terrorism. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. This was an intentional, targeted assault based on a neighborhood because he searched and researched the blackest community within a few-hour drive of his neighborhood, where he lived in the southern tier of New York, and he found it. It's my neighborhood. It's not far from where I live, and I live in a very diverse community. And it was an executing people because of the color of their skin. So the investigation continues, but I believe the facts are crystal clear. This person was radicalized on social media, and I have been calling out social media platforms for the role they have played in allowing this information to fester and spread. And we know where it's coming from, and it's starting to be mainstreamed, and that's not acceptable. And it has to shut down, and this venom has to stop spreading, and the snakes who are purveying these evil thoughts and spreading it to people, they have to go back under the rocks. I think the rocks were lifted up in 2016, You know what I'm referring to? And now it's time for us to lead and call out anyone who does not support our position to condemn this. If you don't condemn it, then you're part of the problem. I say that to every elected official in this country.
Listen, Governor, I have to ask you about the president. President Biden is going to visit Buffalo tomorrow. What are you going to ask him to do?
Well, he called me yesterday and we had a long talk. He said, Kathy, what can I do? Tell me anything I can do. I said, Mr. President, you're the most empathetic person who's ever sat in that position. We need you to come to Buffalo. We need you to give our community a collective hug and just talk to the survivors' families and the victims' families and let this community know that we matter. A place like Buffalo, it was a scrappy steel town when I grew up. My dad was a steelworker. Parents lived in a trailer park. You know, everybody's just regular in Buffalo, and I love that about this city. It is a tough, resilient city, and it's coming back, but it never gets much attention. And talk about weather, talk about football, you know, it's who we are. And I said to the president, you come to a place like this, it's going to matter so much to the people. So I want to talk to you about having a national conversation again about gun violence. And this isn't just Buffalo, it's the subway shooting in Brooklyn, where I went down there, 10 people shot, luckily survived. And I hugged the families who were wondering if their children are going to survive their surgery. It's also happening in the Bronx and in Brooklyn and our streets in Rochester and Buffalo and Syracuse every day of the week. So there are different kinds of violence, but it all comes down to easy access to weapons of mass destruction. And that's what we have to have a conversation about.
Well, let's talk about because I know that you are that you're going to call for a national response to fight gun violence. But let's just talk about the suspects' gun arsenal. CNN obtained the photo of the suspects' gun arsenal. These weapons weren't used by show, but they show writing, I should say, on them, including the phrase "White Lives Matter." And we know he was in trouble in high school after making a reference to murder-suicide in the project. It was bad enough to be examined in the facility for a day and a half. So that's according to Erie County Sheriff. Were some red flags missed here, Governor?
I'm going to find that out, Don, because I'm real unhappy about that outcome. We have laws in place, but they need to be followed. But also, the gun that he used, yes, the basic gun, the AR-15, was legal under New York state law, and that's something I'm looking at. But what the magazine that resulted in the mass casualties was acquired at a gun store in Pennsylvania where they are legal. That magazine is not legal in the state of New York. You cannot have a semi-automatic weapon in New York that allows that level of capacity in the magazine. So what happens is, when you're on the border of Pennsylvania, the flow of guns is so easy. People go from New York, the traffickers, they open up their trunk at a gun show, they load it up, and they bring it up to the streets of New York City in particular. A lot of them are landing in the Bronx. And I have assembled a 9-state interdiction task force to say, why aren't we sharing information? I know nationally there's not a law that requires this, but how about 9 smart states that get together, first in the nation, that now tracks and shares information? And we've stopped a lot of the gun trafficking, but in this case, the person legally bought the gun in New York, but enhanced it with this magazine that he acquired in Pennsylvania.
Well, let me ask you about that, because you know that it's going to go before the Supreme Court, this right to carry or open carry or what have you in New York, in New York City. What is your concern level about that?
Oh, it's off the charts. Think about the fact that someone could do what they did in Buffalo, just walk in and have the gun hidden in their pockets and then fire on people, so there's not even any warning. No. If this gets struck down by the Supreme Court, and we'll literally know in a matter of weeks, and with what we've seen telegraphed from this Supreme Court about people's rights, women's rights, their own body and reproductive freedom, this is a scary Supreme Court. And we all should have known that. I guess some of us saw it, but those who supported Donald Trump for president, knowing that he had the ability to name Supreme Court nominees, now we're living with the consequences of that election. And that could have an effect on the state of New York's ability to protect its citizens with smart gun safety laws. And I pray they don't strike it down, but we'll go back to the drawing board. We're not going to let that deter our efforts to protect New Yorkers from random gun violence. Too many people's lives have been lost already.
Governor Hochul, thank you so much. It's been such a difficult time in New York, and this is just awful. So thank you for appearing. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tom.
It was once a conspiracy theory limited to the fringe of the far right. Now some politicians and right-wing media figures spread the racist white replacement theory.
Usually when we talk about iconic watches, we talk about watches from brands that were founded 100 or even 200 years ago. In 1999, French watchmaker François-Paul Journe moved from France to Geneva and set up his own brand there. In the year 2000, he launched his first watch, and the sound everybody in the watch world heard were jaws hitting the floor. Inside every mechanical watch is a balance wheel, which swings back and forth and helps to keep the watch accurate. Inside Journe's watch, the chronomètre à résonance, are two balance wheels, and they swing back and forth, but in near perfect unison. They cost about $106,000 to around $110,000. But that's not much when you consider that you're getting one of the newest icons in the watch world.
I've personally met people around the world who told me that the first way that they found out about sex trafficking was through our documentary Nefarious. And for many people, that was the turning point that they chose to commit their life to fight this issue. My name is Helen Taylor, and I am the Vice President of Impact at the anti-human trafficking organization Exodus Cry. We are currently headquartered in Southern California. Exodus Cry began back in 2008. Our founder, Benjamin Nolot, found out about the issue of trafficking and how it was a global human rights crisis. With a background in filmmaking, he went overseas to 19 different nations and interviewed survivors, spoke with global activists and politicians, and from that series of trips, he created a documentary called Nefarious Merchant of Souls. It's been used by hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations and communities to raise awareness. It's been shown on military bases, in churches, before the UN, in the US White House, parliaments around the world. So it's really is such a testament to the power of a documentary and a story that you're able to spotlight an incredibly important and urgent global issue in a way that many people beyond your immediate reach are able to hear about.
I'm Nick Watt in Los Angeles, and this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
I am Nigerian by blood, British by birth, and American by residence. It is important to me that those same strands of inclusivity that flow through me are mirrored in the stories that we tell. One World is a place where Africa has an equal seat at the global table alongside Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Every continent has a voice, and where everyone watching has a stake in the global conversation.
One World with Zain Asher, tonight on CNN.
I'm Wolf Blitzer. This is CNN.
New details tonight in the investigation of the Buffalo mass shooting. The alleged gunman posting rantings online fixated on what's known as replacement theory, the false idea that white people are being slowly and intentionally replaced by minorities and immigrants. The racist theory has been promoted by some on social media and by elected officials and right-wing media figures. Here's CNN's Sunlen Serfati.
What was once a fringe white supremacist conspiracy theory has now become mainstream.
Jews will not replace us!
We know what the Democrats are up to here. They want open borders. This is exactly their strategy. They want to replace the American electorate.
With a growing number of Republican lawmakers now openly promoting the far-right so-called Great Replacement theory.
For many Americans, what seems to be happening, or what they believe right now is happening, is what appears to them is we're replacing national-born American, native-born Americans to permanently transform the political landscape of this very nation.
The racist anti-immigrant theory that says non-white immigrants are being brought to replace America's white population.
This administration wants complete open borders, and you have to ask yourself why. Is it really they want to remake the demographics of America?
Democrat politicians who have decided that they can't win re-election in 2022 unless they bring in a large number of new voters to replace the voters that are already here. That's what this is about.
The white nationalist conspiracy theory is detailed in French writer Renaud Camus' 2011 book called The Great Replacement. And elements of replacement theory appear to have motivated some of the most heinous recent mass murders in the U.S. and around the world. Just this weekend, an 18-year-old man accused of shooting and killing 10 people in a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, allegedly wrote a manifesto online claiming ethnic and cultural replacement of whites. The gunman, accused of killing more than 20 people at an El Paso Walmart in 2019, allegedly uploaded a document on the internet before the shooting, saying, quote, "This attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. They are the instigators, not me. I am simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement brought on by the invasion." The man, who allegedly killed 11 people at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018, spouted nonsense on social media about Jewish people being somehow responsible for immigrant, quote, invaders. And the shooter, who killed 51 people at a mosque and Islamic center in Christchurch, New Zealand, named his own manifesto the Great Replacement. The theory has been amplified by voices on Fox News.
I mean, everyone wants to make a racial issue out of it. Ooh, the white replacement theory. No. This is a voting rights question. I have less political power because they're importing a brand new electorate. Why should I sit back and take that?
And openly defended by name by sitting members of Congress.
And in light of this shooting, we reached out to Congressman Babin and Perry, as well as Senator Ron Johnson and J.D. Vance. Those are the Republicans we mentioned who have promoted elements of replacement theory in the past. Now, we only received a response from one, the office of Senator Ron Johnson, and they say, quote, "The senator absolutely condemns the racist murders that occurred in Buffalo, and they call the notion that the senator supports replacement theory a lie." Don?
Sunlen, thanks so much. Join me now, extremism expert Peter Simi. He's an associate professor at Chapman University and the author of American Swastika. So good to have you here to discuss this, Peter. Good evening to you. Sunlen's reporting shows the recent examples of replacement theory making it into the mainstream, but just how long have these racist ideas been around?
Well, it's a very long history, Don. Before you saw the term replacement theory become more prominent in white supremacist circles, you would hear the term white genocide, which is essentially replacement by a different name. The idea that the white race is on the verge of extinction. They've been talking in these circles for years about 2050, the year when it's projected that whites will be basically a minority in the United States, numerically speaking. But we also should keep in mind that it has a much longer history than that, even in terms of the 20th century. It goes back really, you saw ideas expressed that are essentially very similar to replacement theory during the Reconstruction era after the U.S. Civil War. We saw the 1915 film Birth of a Nation, which was essentially an expression of replacement theory, which was an ode to the original founding of the Ku Klux Klan. And as you'll remember, President Woodrow Wilson spoke about the Birth of a Nation film as like writing history with a lightning rod. It was widely heralded by folks, white Americans across the country. Because of its ideas and the fears that it was promoting. So these are deeply rooted in our society. And so I think we have to really think about it in those terms.
Even there was a screening even at the White House of Birth of a Nation, right?
Right.
The Washington Post reports that only 22 people, Peter, were watching the gunman's live broadcast of the shooting, but all it took was one person to save that video and share it. It led to millions of views. How was the video able to go viral starting from the darkest corners of the internet? I mean, what do platforms need to do to stop that from happening?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, Don. Twitch did respond, relatively quickly as far as, shutting down the video quicker than what happened with the New Zealand shooting, which was also live streamed. But as you said, these things can circulate even with those actions taken by some of the platforms. So, certainly there's a lot more discussion to be had about platforms and what they should be doing to be monitoring this type of hatred and promotion of violence. And so that's certainly a big discussion. And certainly there's potential for congressional intervention that may be necessary in terms of having some stricter regulations and monitoring and oversight of some of these platforms, which really has been kind of the Wild West in many respects.
Peter Simi, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Don.
We're just hours away from key primaries in 5 states, including Pennsylvania, and a series of late dramatic twists could reshape the race.
I'm Patrick Ottman in Havana, Cuba, and this is CNN.
I'm Andrea Vena. I'm the Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer at the European Space Agency. The great responsibility that ESA has to be responsible is linked very much to the fact that since decades our programs are contributing to the understanding of climate change. Our satellites are contributing to the climate variables that are used by scholars and scientists all over the world to identify what are the hotspots for climate change. Therefore, we feel accountable. We know what is the situation, and therefore it is very much important for ESA to be on the leading edge for fighting against climate change.
Voters heading to the polls tomorrow for primary elections in several key states, including Pennsylvania. CNN's David Chalian has been going through all of the important races. And David, what can we expect?
Don, tomorrow is a huge primary day across the country with some marquee Senate races that actually come this fall may determine which party controls the United States Senate. Take a look here. Kentucky, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. We'll be talking about that a lot. Idaho and Oregon, coast to coast, big primaries. In Pennsylvania, that key Republican Senate primary, David McCormick, the former hedge fund manager, also an Army veteran, sought Donald Trump's endorsement in this race, but didn't get it. It's Mehmet Oz, the celebrity doctor, who actually got the former president's backing in this race. Will it be enough to get him across the finish line first in the race tomorrow? Because Kathy Barnett has sort of upended what had been a two-person race. And she's running to the right. She is running as sort of an ultra-MAGA conservative trying to out-Trump Trump in this race. The former president says he doesn't think she could win a general election, but her rise has really scrambled this race into a real three-person contest. On the Democratic side, you've got John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor. He is a clear frontrunner in this Democratic primary and just suffered a stroke, his campaign announced. He actually will be observing the election results, most likely from his hospital room, as he's recovering from a stroke and expected to make a full recovery. He's up against Connor Lamb, the congressman from out west in Pennsylvania, from the Pittsburgh area, and Malcolm Kenyatta, who's from the Philadelphia area in the state. In the governor's race on the Republican side, you've got frontrunner Doug Mastriano. He is an election 2020 denier. He does not believe Joe Biden was legitimately elected. Donald Trump has backed him in this race. Republicans in the mainstream element of the party are concerned that if he's the nominee, it may hand the race to the Democrats in the fall. Down in North Carolina, another Trump test. Ted Budd, the Republican congressman, he's got Trump's backing. He's up against Pat McCrory, the former Republican governor who was seen as a conservative rising star, Don, but that's not sufficient anymore in this world of the Trump-era Republican Party. Ted Budd has the former president's backing, and he is the one to watch tomorrow night. The congressional race, where Madison Cawthorn is trying to hang on to his job. He's the incumbent congressman. He's got some serious competition. Donald Trump issued a statement urging his constituents to give him a second chance, despite some of the more controversial things that he has ended up being involved with in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if Cawthorn can hang on to his job. And out in Idaho, the incumbent Republican governor is running against the lieutenant governor who's serving underneath him. Janice McGeachin has Trump's backing in this race. Another big test of the former president's power and sway inside the Republican Party. And on the Democratic side in Oregon, a congressional race, incumbent Kurt Schrader. Joe Biden got involved in this race. He endorsed the incumbent, the more mainstream Democrat, versus a progressive challenger, Jamie McLeod Skinner. We'll see if Biden's help in this race gets that incumbent another shot at re-election. So key contests all across the country, but stay focused on that Pennsylvania Republican Senate race. It's going to be critical. We're going to learn a lot about Donald Trump's power and ability to get his preferred candidate across the finish line or not, but we're also going to learn how Republican voters are looking to choose candidates and position themselves for a midterm election that should be to their advantage. Don?
All right, David Chalian, going to be interesting. Thanks so much. I mentioned it at the top of the show, someone doing the right thing and standing up to racism. A moment I'd like you to see.
What do you see when you look at the surface? Just that, the surface. It's when we dive in that discovery begins. Gathering and dissecting data, predicting trends, and projecting risk. Setting aside assumptions and questioning everything, from how we do our work to what our work can do. Down here in the depths, a new world of possibility emerges. Essential intelligence from S&P Global takes you here, providing the data, technology, workflow solutions, and expertise you need to push below the surface and plumb the wonders beneath. Because a better, more prosperous future awaits. It's yours for the seeking. S&P Global. Seek and prosper.
We share this place, we all belong.
I think it is the opportunity of government, and it's the opportunity of the private sector, and it's the opportunity of our American communities to welcome refugees. You know, the fall of the Afghan government, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you know, these have triggered massive displacement events at a scale and speed not seen in decades. I think what we've discovered at Welcome.us is while there are significant capacity constraints to overcome, they can best be overcome when we tap into the extraordinary capacity of our American communities, our civic organizations, and our private sector. Refugees often arrive with a wide variety of professional and educational backgrounds. And what we know from the refugee experience is that they're extraordinarily successful. Attracting newcomers and welcoming them robustly is a win-win for everybody.
This is the Innovation Center, right?
Indeed, where the magic happens. So what you're going to be going through now is an experience zone built with the end user journey in mind. So
Akshay Chopra heads the Innovation Center at Visa's newly opened regional headquarters in Dubai. I'm taking a seat. This is for me.
This is all yours.
Thank you very much. Overseeing 90 markets from Europe to Asia.
You can take any surface like a bus stop, a metro station, turn it into a well-stocked retail store.
And let's just say, it's pretty cool. Turning everyday bores and chores into a digital delight. This is actually a really good first take, don't you think? Add to cart.
We want to make it easier for people to pay, get paid. We work with governments, with fintechs, with banks, with merchants of all shapes and sizes to help build payment experiences that are more convenient, more seamless, and more secure.
In a region where cash is king, Akshay says the global pandemic accelerated the move to digital.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
I really want you to watch this because it's what you can do in your own moment, your own small little world, right? Our own little personal world. At the top of the show tonight, I mentioned the moment that I noticed that I wanted to share with you. Well, take this, an instance of someone doing the right thing in the face of bigotry and ignorance, again, in the moment. I don't know if it'll change the people who he did it to, but they face consequences in the moment, and that's what people need to do. Pennsylvania rideshare driver James Bodie, posting on Facebook an encounter he had with potential customers this weekend. The video has since gone viral. Watch.
Hello. Right?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, you're like a white guy.
What's that?
Are you like a white guy?